We're going to give you an overview of the different tasks that are available within FlowWright. There are about 7 different tasks that we provide with the product, and they perform various different functions, and they have different abilities based on what you want to use them for. So if you look at the different ones, let's start with the most simple one is the regular task. The regular task can be routed to anybody just by selecting users or roles, and all you have to do is provide a task description, and the task is ready to go. There are also various other items that you can configure. You can also route this task to an email address if you like, or email addresses. You can also set a task priority. You can set a task expiration. So you can say this task needs to be done within 5 days or 5 hours or 5 minutes. You can also have the task calculation for the expiration use weekends, whether to include weekends or not. And we also have some default rules, task rules. By default, it will process the task normally, where it will just route to the user. But you can also do things like you can do task locking. You can have this task routed to uh, the user that has the least number of tasks in total, or least number of tasks by workflow definition. So there are different rules that you can use. You can also set up task reminders. You can have automatic reminders go. You can also say wait for all to respond. So if you send the tasks to 5 people, and if you want all 5 people to respond, this will wait. If I turn this to yes, this will wait until every single person responds, or if anybody rejects, the task is considered rejected. And otherwise, if you send it to 5 people and just one person accepts the task or approves the task, then it's completed. You can also send an email notification. You can configure from email address, email subject, email body, and also whether you want to send expired email notifications, and also to include acknowledgement link. And in this particular basic task, you will see when the task is rendered, you will see approve button and a reject button. And by default, it says approve, reject. You can also give your own naming text here. So if it's a PO, you can say approve PO or reject PO. In some cases, you might want to hide the reject button because you want the user to complete that task without rejecting it. So you can also do that. And this last option is if the user can reassign the task to somebody else. The next task we're going to look at is the choice task. In this choice task, the difference between this and the regular task is the regular task choices are already defined. They're either approve or reject. But in the choice task, you have the ability to define your own return values or the choices. So let's say I'm going to call this task select a color, and I can select who I want to route this to. I can give a description here. Let's say select a color, and then I can also set up my return values. I can go in here and I can say I want somebody to pick from red, green, blue. So you can do things like yes, no questions. You can have various options here as return values or choices. And when the task is routed, the user is given the option to select a value from the drop down and complete the task. And based on the selected value, you can have the workflow go down a certain path. And the rest of the configuration on this step is pretty similar to the task step. The next task step is the checklist task. Very similar to our other tasks, and in this case, same thing. You select who you want to route to, but you can select and you can configure a checklist list of items. So you can go into this menu and you can say, here's my checklist. And so you might have things like perform preview scan. Okay, next might be perform scan, and third might be save PDF. So here you have given 3 checklist items that they have to complete, and you can say I can also mark these required or not required or optional. And this way, when the task is routed, it will show a checklist to the user, and they can complete the checklist and they can complete the task once all the items are completed, all the required items are completed in the checklist. The next task is user selection task. Here, let's say you want to route for user selection. So let's say you want to route it to the finance group and say, can you please select the user that should approve this particular purchase order? So you can say who you want to route to using the route dialog here. And then you can also configure user selection. When you go to configure user selection, there are a couple of different options here. You can add any number of these options, and you can select whether you want to select from users or whether you want to select from roles. So if I say roles, you'll see I have a set of roles I can pick from. I can give a label. I can say, I'm going to go ahead and say select user for PO approval. And over here, I can tell which variable I want to store that the user selection in. So I'm going to call it, let's say, finance approval. And if I want another approval, I can add another row, and I can say I can give a label, I can give another variable, and this way, when the task is routed to the user will get a user selection dialog where they can make selections and then complete the task. The next one is if you want to route a form to a user. So you might have a form with fields and various UI controls. You can give a task name. You can select who you want to route to. You can route to users or you can route to roles. You can select the form you want. And the rest of the configuration is pretty similar to our other task steps. And at this step, it will create a form instance if the form instance doesn't exist, and it will route that form to the selected user or users or roles. The next 2 steps are routing to a queue. We can also route tasks and forms to queues. FlowWright fully supports queues. You can define your own queues and then route forms and tasks to those queues. And the configuration is very similar. You can give a task, you can pick which queue you want to send this task to, and then configure the rest of the items that are very similar to the other task steps. And we also have another step called close open tasks. And sometimes this comes in handy if, let's say, one branch of your workflow has completed certain logic and you want to close certain workflow task steps. You can use this step and you can pick which step you want to close. If you don't provide one, then it will also, in this one, you have to select which one to close, and it will close that specific step.